We're on time, Dan. You're listening to and watching the CTO Advisor Studio from the Venetian in Las Vegas. I have with me a good friend in the industry and one of the better financial analysts that I'm going to call you a financial analyst because I always see you on CNBC. You're quoted in the Wall Street Journal all the time. We have this thing, you're the CEO of Futurum Group, Principal Analysts. We have this thing running between us. We're at VMware Explore about this merger between VMware and Broadcom.
It's an acquisition.
It is an acquisition. And we're going to finally have it out. Yeah, we're going to do this, man.
Can I just say something to the audience really quickly?
Sure.
Okay. This is not financial advice. I'm not technically a financial analyst. Let me explain what I am as an industry analyst.
Okay.
But when I founded the Futurum Group, what I did find was there was one thing that inspired the tech vendors more than anything else. You know what that is?
Their stock price.
The stock price. So when you're an industry analyst, you kind of talk about the product, the service, the go-to-market, the strategy, and all that stuff's good. But the question the executives ask when they invest in partnerships with analysts or influencers or thought leaders or they do paid media is it going to move my stock price? So to be very clear, understanding the connection, on the 6.5, Patrick and I call it the ground truth. Mm-hmm. The performance, the quarterly performance of a stock is the ground truth of, is that, vSphere upgrade landing in the marketplace? Are people, getting behind NSX? I'm just using examples from VMware here, of course, but whatever it is. So all things considered, I think knowing the market and the price and the stock and the products and the services really shows a holistic understanding of the business.
And I really appreciate that clarification because we're both industry analysts and I look at it primarily from the customer lens. Yeah. And this is where both of us, let's talk about where we agree with the Broadcom acquisition. Neither one of us are financial analysts, but I absolutely believe this is a brilliant move by Broadcom. From just extracting value from an asset like VMware, I think Hot Time will do a fantastic job of meeting his commitment to his investors and returning value. The question becomes, where we, I think, start to differ is this a net good for customers?
Is that a question?
That's a question. Is this a net good for customers? So I'm scratching my head. Broadcom, I look at all the hardware acquisitions that they've made, and they've extracted value and moved the needle on the hardware side. So from a track record, from a hardware side, from a chip and semiconductor perspective, I've seen it happen on the networking side. Their network products are some of the best in the industry, and they continue to lead the way on just the network side, for instance. The software side,
let me chime in there because I think there is some underestimating of how successful the Symantec acquisition has been or the CA acquisition has been. Hock Tan has shown his cards. In fact, he's one of the more transparent CEOs, and I've had the chance to spend some time with him that I've met. Mm-hmm. Does that mean he's not shrewd? Does that mean he hasn't, karate chopped the companies? And he has. If it was Elon Musk, it would be a bigger story. But because he's in enterprise and he's in enterprise tech, it barely makes the news because there's barely any enterprise tech press left. But here's the thing. A company's responsibility, when I did my MBA, I don't remember learning much. But I remember on the first day of one of my classes, the professor said the number one job of a manager is to return value to shareholders. VMware's growth has been pretty anemic, comparatively with most high-growth software companies. You're talking at best 10%. Mm-hmm. The company has made, and we heard Sumit talk, and he showed some pretty encouraging numbers with larger growth to SaaS. But overall, the business, in terms of the outputs, which is the equity, means there's limited dollars to return to shareholders. It means that there's limited dollars to invest in product development. Where I think multi-cloud. We talk cross-cloud. You corrected me. We can debate that at another time, but being the next wave. We've seen a pretty substantial growth vector in Red Hat's direction at the expense of VMware sitting on that opportunity. Tanzu did not land.
Right.
And so I think Hock is looking at this thing going, yeah, it's a good company. It's got loyal, you see it here. You're at the event. You see how loyal the people are that are here. But are they loyal because this is the best? Or, go back a decade or two to the early era of Cisco certifications, when people were really knowledgeable about Cisco, when they had their CCIEs and their CCNAs, and they would have installed anything Cisco because they were like the Cisco warriors. And so are the VMware folks the people that refused to fully embrace cloud? Are they the people that missed the, again, debate Red Hat and even open source at this moment, but the open source move to the Kubernetes, and this is where I think you're great, by the way. But what I can tell you immediately is at 37,000 employees, Hock Tan's looking at that and saying too many people. He's saying too much expense. He's already pretty much more or less publicly said or come out and said, that there's some billions of additional profit opportunity here, and how can that then be reinvested in the products he believes? This is what he does. I realize I'm talking a while. He believes in he'll pick pieces of the portfolio, and we don't know for sure what he'll do. I think he's going to change the portfolio.
So here's what I'm excited about, and this is parts I'm excited about. There's stuff. I'm not a VMware employee.
You were.
VMware, I were 6 years ago, and
I were.
And I were. That's proper English for you English majors. I was a VMware employee, and I don't invest in VMware. They're not even a customer, so I talk pretty freely about VMware. There's businesses VMware has no business being in anymore. The EUC business can just go away. They haven't innovated in there. They obviously haven't. They've invested in that business. It's more or less on maintenance. There's a bunch of different areas VMware just shouldn't be playing in. I don't think they should have security products, especially compared to Symantec. If you look at the two portfolios, you're like, there's some justification that can go on in there. 37,000 employees is a lot of employees for a purely software company. Their cost of acquisition for a customer, their cost of sales, relatively high for a pure software business. They have a challenge developing this T for telling the customer story for cross-cloud. When I talk to customers, the sales folks are still leading with the vSphere message when VMware has a pretty decent cross-cloud story. That stuff, free advice, give that out to the channel and focus on developing that skill set. VMware has proved they've earned the right to be acquired by Broadcom. They've come to the point that they've earned the right to be acquired by Broadcom because they are sitting in pole position. I think a great example of that was the conversation with NVIDIA and Jensen on stage. They have a legit Gen AI story. I was actually surprised. They just repackaged stuff that they've done in the past to present it as generative AI. So VMware has an opportunity, or Broadcom rather, has an opportunity to execute VMware's vision better than VMware could execute.
Well, he's going to do that because one, he's going to remove the unnecessary costs. He's going to do it quickly, which a lot of people, it's created a lot of stress. It's created a lot of anxiety. Mm-hmm. It doesn't help to have, if you have 37,000 and you can say, he's probably looking at this and saying, I can do it with under 20. Realistically, that's probably, based on history, that's probably where Hock's head is at right now. You look at the income of the company, you look at what he's paying for the company, and the multiple on it. He has to have looked inside of those financial statements. This is where being, astute financially makes sense. Looked into those statements, said, I can take this from 1 or 2 billion in EBITDA on a quarter. I could take it to 8, or I could take it to, he believes he can take a lot of cost out and grow it quickly. Otherwise, the shareholders wouldn't support him. And if you do look at the performance of the company's stock, of Broadcom, it is beloved by its shareholders. The company, for being somewhat seen as a little boring, a little bit, the chips they're in aren't the most advanced in many cases. The software they bought, mainframes, security, they've bought into industries that have longevity, that have dedicated customer bases, that have margin expansion, and he's gotten rid of everything that doesn't make money. He'll sunset what doesn't make money. He'll find products that are needed to be sunset that have very little competition. He'll maximize margin, and he'll run them until they're no longer necessary. And he'll invest. And I spent some time studying the innovation patterns, Keith, and he'll invest heavily in the parts of the business where there's money to be made. He sees parts of the VMware business as an opportunity to make money. He believes in the hybrid cloud. And I think that in a year or two, it will be very different. But I spent a lot of time with Greg Locko. He runs their mainframe business, Broadcom mainframe. And when I came in the first time to do any work with Broadcom, I literally thought they must be the most hated company on the planet. I'd never heard outsiders say many good things. But when you talk to insiders, it's a totally different thing. The people that work there work very hard, but they genuinely see the vision, they buy into it, and they seem to be excited about it, which is interesting because in these other companies where we kind of hear that they're cool and hip, when you actually get people off the record, you sometimes get the opposite. Like they look very cool on the surface, and you get them underneath the covers, Keith, and they're like, it's a facade.
I'm not running to Broadcom employees, generally speaking, that aren't happy. You read the reviews, people love working there. They get well compensated. They work hard. When I talk to the VMware employees who believe they have a future at Broadcom, they don't know. You can't know, but they are excited. They are open to the opportunities. I think if you're in different parts of the business that are obviously struggling or not really what they perceive as core, they're a little worried. And as they should be. But I think if you're a customer, this is an opportunity to clearly see the signal from the noise. VMware has a lot of products that they put marketing dollars behind, but not necessarily R&D behind. And we will see that shift over the next few quarters of what's really important to VMware. Where should I look? I pointed out EUC. Where should I look to VMware for EUC innovation versus where should I go look to another partner or software vendor for innovation around EUC? And overall, you're going to get a clearer picture of where does VMware fit in your IT portfolio over the next few quarters, and that is not a bad thing.
No, absolutely. Look, I actually always appreciated your assessment. You had both the inside view and a little bit more as the advisor to technologist view. I will not proclaim to have ever spun up the technology, which is something that you are uniquely prepared to talk about. What I will say is you have to understand the health of a company long term provides the opportunity for those that work within it. As an industry analyst, we need to analyze the tech, but you also need to analyze the business health and wellness. When a company stops growing at a certain pace, you need to look at what are the factors limiting its growth, and you mentioned some of them, in either underinvesting, getting into too many things, not necessarily properly understanding customer trends and shifts. And so there was a little bit of this that had been happening. There's been some changing at the top, changing of the guard. And then, of course, we've come into a period with generative AI technology where things are changing so fast that don't know is one of our biggest competitors any given day, Keith. VMware still is showing what I would call a little bit of vulnerability right now. The statement that went up today, I don't know if you had a chance to watch the keynote, but at the keynote there was this disclaimer that basically said, we're going to show a bunch of things, but we make no promise to actually build them. To me, what that says is, we don't know what we're going to become yet, and until this acquisition is done, we don't want to fully commit to what we're going to become yet. And of course, products can always get killed along the way. Mm-hmm. But there's just this, the company's ready, the transition is happening. You saw my tweet yesterday, getting the US approval, even if it's by expiration of date, was the big hurdle. I know people think it's China, I think it's the US. There's a joke that runs around about how many licenses of VMware has been bought in China.
Yeah, I know the answer to that joke. It's a riddle. Literally one. It's not.
That's not actually the case.
Yeah.
But
vSphere is expensive technology.
But what I mean is, when you have unlike hardware, where Hawk is very experienced in China, And they have a very important relationship with China's ambitions to compete, especially right now with all the chip controls and everything that's going on with, no ASML, no EUV, no leading edge nodes. You have literally dependency on being able to get either legacy or at least good enough 7 nanometer and above to be able to even play in the AI sandbox right now. Broadcom's in a really interesting, unique, and strong position. In the end, I started off kind of being the way I was, almost to be contrarian, because everyone was when. I was like, let's wait and see. As I got to know the situation more, I feel better and better and better about where I stand on the situation. And I think those that really came out really slamming the deal are going to be chewing their words for quite a long time. But I like to be wrong occasionally, but you'll never see me post about it.
So we'll see where we're at. Now, for the record, I've always said I think financially an amazing deal. Makes a lot of sense. I'm questioning, and I still question, the innovation for customers who've invested in the VMware stack over the past, whether it's Tanzu, application platform, all 12 of you. We really appreciate you investing in the VMware vision. Or if it's the EUC, the security stuff, NSX, which I don't think is going anywhere, vSphere not going anywhere, small customers, large customers, VMware Cloud on AWS, the technology list goes on and on and on. And again, we've seen a lot of bells and stops from VMware in the past. Can Hot Time focus VMware? That's the bet that Dan, I think, is making. The question that I'm focusing on is, does he have the intuition to know what VMware customers, or more important, the cloud market wants from VMware in the future? I'm rooting for VMware/Broadcom because I think a healthy VMware Broadcom is good for the industry. You want to find out more about either of our companies, Dan, where can they find Futurum Group?
Yeah, check us out, www.futurumgroup.com, or check out my Twitter. I put pretty much everything out there. It's at Daniel Newman, UV. Hopefully he can throw that along the bottom there, but if he didn't, it's easy. Daniel Newman, spelled just like the Seinfeld Newman, and UV at the end, and I will explain why that's there some other time on a different show.
And if you want to find me, you can find me on x.com, at CTO Advisor, because...
X. Whatever.
Talk to you next, CTO Advisor, CTO Studio.